Thank you everyone for joining. I believe that we do have a quorum. So I note that the time is now 5:02 and this meeting of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee Safety Subcommittee will be adjourned. And
not adjourned, right?
sorry, not adjourned. I apologize. Is going to be started. I was just making sure that everybody was paying attention, but clearly you are. And that's probably the only joke that I will tell today. Just pulling up our agenda. Okay. So we've now called to order. The first thing is I'd like to appoint a recorder for today. Mary Beth or Dorcas, are you able to, either one of you, be able to be the recorder for today?
I can do it.
Okay, thank you. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that. And then the next item on our agenda is to review and discuss the minutes from our last meeting, which was the 18th. And those minutes have been made available to the public, including the members of this committee. Are there any comments on the minutes from October 18th? Okay. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes from October 18th?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of October 18th.
Thank you. Do we have a second? That would be you, Dorcas, if you can go off mute. Okay. I think I'm allowed to approve the minutes, even though I'm also the chair. So I'll second the motion, I should say. So now if we could just do a roll call on the minutes, the motion to approve the minutes. Mary Beth?
Aye.
Dorcas? The chair will recognize that Dorcas has verbally noted yes. Her volume is off, but I clearly saw that she said, yes, the motion has passed. And the minutes from the 18th are approved. Now we'll continue with committee business. The next item on the agenda is the discussion of any follow-up items from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee meeting of November 10th. I didn't think that there were any other than the noted items that we have in the agenda. There was no new business that was assigned to us, merely the recognition that we continue to meet. But is there anything anybody thought that we were given a new item coming out of the meeting of November 10th? Again, I didn't see anything, but I just wanted to make sure.
I was not at the meeting, so.
Okay.
November 10th.
Okay, that's fair. And Dorcas, it seems like you're still on mute. I don't know if you have any comments, but to really summarize what they talked about for your benefit, Mary Beth, is the principles, the signs rather, were drafted. We all got a copy of that. So that went to the town so that we can have our position considered, and at which point it would go back to the Friends. So that was that was just noted. And then all we did is we restated what this committee is what our next charge is, which
Deborah,
is to.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dorcas has left the meeting. I think she's going to try to get back in, so you don't.
Okay,
have a
so we have to
quorum.
wait.
We
Okay,
have to
so we have
wait.
to wait.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna wait then. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, sometimes people have trouble. I know sometimes I have trouble with things like this. You know, even today, you know, I was on a call and I couldn't, you know, I had to disconnect and reconnect. So I think it just, this is our life. You know, we're very grateful for all the technologies that spun up. Sometimes they don't work. So I hope she is able to join. I see we have 3 members of the public, so I always am so appreciative of the public's time in these meetings.
I'm wondering if her computer had the sound off, perhaps.
Yeah,
Sometimes I've had to do that and then forget to put it back on. There she is. We'll see. Connecting to audio.
okay, great. Thank you. Dorcas, if you can hear us, just say hello, you know, when you join.
Am I here?
Yes.
There you are. Good.
Gotcha.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So to restate, just to go back, all I was doing is basically summarizing what we discussed, and that number one, there wasn't anything new that was assigned to us. Number two, that the proposal, as we all saw, was published in the town. The recommendations for the sign, that also was brought forward. So that was really the key there. What we did is, just had a general discussion about the state of rail trails writ large, and that, it's increasingly an important topic. Obviously, in Concord and surrounding communities, but all over the country and even all over the world. And that conversation came up in the context of Junction Park and the continued awareness that there's a real focus on safety there, which is really why this committee was created. And so what I'd like to do now, since
Just-
there were, yep.
May I interrupt again? I'm sorry. Terry Ackerman has her hand up.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to recognize her right now, but
yeah. Thank you, Terry. I think what we're going to do, because we want to get to the point of our business, which is confirming our principles, which we've done, and then getting to our scope. And then I'd like to open up to the public then, if that makes sense, because at this point, we still are behind. We need to make some progress. Does that make sense to you?
That's fine. But if I could have 30 seconds for follow-up.
Of course.
Your safety committee recommended to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Full Committee. And then Nat Welch came before the select board last night, and we did endorse your recommendations. And that will now go to the Friends, that we will, Concord will now be on board with the uniform signage.
Oh, thank you.
Great.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for letting us know.
Thank you for doing all the work on it. It was everybody, it was unanimous. Everybody was really pleased with it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. So then the next point, again, as I said, of our agenda is to have the continued discussion of scope. And just again, to sort of rewind the tape, we spoke about our key principles, and we have not, to my knowledge, formally adopted them, but we certainly articulated them quite well at the last meeting. And what's before us now is to take that motion, which was to adopt the principles of courtesy, common sense, care, personal responsibility, and welcoming language, in formulating and communicating rules, and then to take, and there's some others, again, I'm going from the last meeting, and then to take that and say, given the principles, what is the scope of this committee? And then the second piece of that is, what do we want the main categories of our recommendations? Not what are our recommendations, but what are the main categories of our recommendations to be? And I think when I think about Junction Park and that process, that worked pretty well, is they had their principles. And then as they were thinking about the different proposals, they evaluated the proposals in light of their principles. And so in our little committee here, which has a big purpose, we would take those principles, and maybe what makes sense is I'm going to go ahead and put something on a whiteboard and just share my screen so we all can be looking at the same thing. So bear with me one moment. I'm just going to share my screen. Pretty sure, Marcia, do I have the ability to share screen, right? Yep. Okay, cool. Let me just share my screen. Okay. All right. So these were the principles, if everybody can see, okay? And then here, the supplementary comments: continue to advocate for work with other stakeholders, continue to explore how or to whom safety concerns and incidents should be reported, and continue to explore how and to make recommendations and react to proposals regarding safety awareness. So I'm going to put that in the scope, excuse me, in the principles. Then what we want to do is say, how do we, what's our next step? What then should be the scope of this committee? We don't, this committee, for example, we could say we think we have a short lifespan. We could say that we've decided that this committee from time to time will be reinvigorated because of an issue. So that would be number one, to think about, you know, how does this safety subcommittee exist? Is it temporary, permanent, and if somewhere in between, what? And then the next step after that would be to say, in that regard to the principles and sort of our longevity, do we feel that we should make some key recommendations to Concord government, again, through the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail full committee, of course. So first question for you all is, do we think that this safety subcommittee is a temporary measure? And once, for example, we have the principles in place and we deliver a report, we're done? What do we think about that? Dorcas, go ahead, please. You don't need to.
I think this is a temporary committee. I think there should not be very many more meetings. I think we've discussed some of the things we needed to talk about, but we have to work with other towns, for example, to establish a speed limit. And I think we need to talk about education of trail users to improve their awareness of safety. And I really think that a couple more meetings and we should be done.
Okay. Mary Beth, any thoughts, comments, edits?
Yeah. I would like to think that we are temporary. Don't know. I think it might be optimistic to think that we can make decisions about speed limits. And I guess I think that at some point we're going to have to confront the issue of e-bikes. And I think that it's optimistic to think that, you know, we can kind of take that on and figure some of that out in just a few more meetings. But I think that So I don't know. I mean, I would like it to be temporary meeting. I think we've sort of have, I can't remember it. Have we made formal decisions around what is inside our scope and what is outside of our scope? Because
No, that's the
that makes-
next.
yeah,
yeah.
I think that really influences how long we whether we're
Okay.
temporary or permanent in some ways for me.
So then maybe if we can put a pin in that, and I'd like to just make a brief statement with your permission. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I just have, and I made some similar comments at the full committee, but I'm going to give this comment, and again, it's just commentary, just for reaction. This is, you could say this is not correct or whatever. These are my thoughts on the safety subcommittee scope, which answers your question, which is what is our scope? And if we can know our scope, that would tell us how many meetings we have left and are we temporary. So here we go. Number one, I think it is within our scope to make a recommendation how to address the speed limit, or we can actually, as we address how to address the speed limit or how you go about that, we can make a recommendation if we feel that we have enough data. If we feel that we do not have enough data, then part of our recommendation could be, for example, do a benchmark study. I personally don't think we need to do this, about, different speed limits. But number one on scope, I think is within our scope to make a recommendation to the full rail trail committee as to how to address speed limits. And in the meantime, what we think a speed limit could be. So that would be recommendation for scope number one. I'm going to just go slow, and I have this, written down so you can, interrupt at any point. And I'm looking at a screen, so unfortunately I can't see you. So if you want to interrupt me, just say Deb, and just interrupt me if you could. The second thing that I think is within the scope is to recommend steps the town can take to promote safety through awareness. So again, we're simply recommending steps the town can take. We're not going to do it, that the town can take to promote safety, including a bike safety communication plan led by the appropriate committees, periodic reminders of how accidents should be reported, how safety is based on the core principles developed by the committee, outreach efforts to other committees in town, education, transportation, working with the friends in the development of videos. All of this would be a recommended approach the town should take to promote safety. Again, we're not saying that we're going to do the work because we can't get it done, but they may ask us to do a piece of it and we could think about that. So that's number two, is make a recommendation to the town of how it should promote safety. And then there were a couple of related steps in that regard, just to underscore, promote safety through ongoing communication with other towns to facilitate consistency, promote safety through modification to the rail trail, such as placing a line in the middle, articulating our speed limit, and then taking annual accounts and benchmarking analysis of those counts to other towns. And so those are some of the things that I thought were in that second bucket of scope. A third item, to the point, Mary Beth, that you made that could be within our scope, is to provide a recommendation for addressing, I'm just going to say it, e-technology, the increasing usage of the trail and how that relates to safety. And then what, again, it would be an analysis that a party would have to conduct to determine what rail trails across the country are doing in response to increasing electrification. And it's not, it's scooters, it's e-bikes, it's there's now shoes. I mean, there's everything. So it's not,
Yeah,
it's everything. So,
yeah, no,
so
you're
those
right.
are the,
Yeah.
yeah. So those are the three things, and there could be more, but those are the three things that I thought were within the scope of the safety subcommittee, and it would really be providing recommendations. I will stop talking, and now I'm back on looking. So go ahead. Yeah, you don't need permission. Go ahead, Dorcas.
I don't think we're reporting to the town. I think we're reporting to the Bruce Freeman Rail Committee.
I agree. Thank you for the correction. So really, to summarize, it's the scope is recommendations regarding speed limit. I'm just keeping that separate because it's a pretty controversial one. Recommendations in terms of promoting safety through awareness, and then recommendations to do more analysis on the impact of electrification. We'll have to figure out the right term, and its impact on safety on the rail trail. And for that, you know, I'm not saying that we have to hire a third party. I offered to do a white paper on it. You know, I don't know if I have the time, candidly. You don't have to hire a third party. We have enough people. We could bring in guest speakers, to be candid. I really don't think we have to spend money. There's enough people that have pretty strong opinions. But so it's really those three recommendations that I'm making. Please go ahead.
I think we need to have an education process, which the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail people as a committee, as a group, could handle. Maybe a school program, some sort of an education process on people, how to use the trail, what is courtesy, what is common sense. And I think that's something that should be in our purview.
So not only do you think that we would make a recommendation to the town that we need such a program of safety awareness, you're even saying you think it's in the purview of the Rail Trail Committee to actually help get it done?
I think the Rail Trail Committee is the one that should make the recommendation to the town. We recommend to the Rail Trail
Okay.
Committee.
Perfect. Okay. I'm in full agreement with you. And there's so many great things that we can do. And you know, we've heard those. Mary Beth?
I'm just a little bit unclear. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying, Dorcas. So you're saying that the safety subcommittee would make recommendations around how to improve education and awareness of safe use of the trail to the, when you say to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, do you mean the larger, like multi-town, or do you mean?
No, I mean our Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. The only one that we record, the only ones that we work with is our committee. Ours is our Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And I'm thinking that I went on another rail trail this week, a couple of weeks ago down on the Cape. They're having pretty much, theirs is very well established and it's been there a long time, but I'm seeing some of the same issues there. And I think we need an education program. I think we need to think about e-bikes or other kinds of e-things, which are going to increase much, much more. I saw in California last year, they're going to be everywhere, scooters, whatever. And I think that's where we need to focus our energy is getting people on board with the idea of safety, of communication, that sort of thing. And e-bikes is a big issue. I think we've got to probably have another subcommittee on that, but it's beyond we can make our recommendation, but Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, the big organization, is the one that has to really work on e-bikes because it's even beyond the purview of our Concord Rail Trail Committee, I think. Same with speed limits. So that's a big issue. It needs to be talked about and handled, and we can recommend, but it's not something that we're going to determine.
Thank you.
Deborah, excuse me for 1 minute. You wanted to take public comments at the end, correct?
Yeah, and I think we're wrapping. So I think we're very close to being able to take the public comments at the end. Yeah, so we're almost at the end of the business. And so Mary Beth, do you feel that you want to sort of summarize what you've heard, then we can establish a motion, which would be a motion as to what the scope is. And then before we take that motion, we should hear from the public. But you want to summarize so then we can let the public weigh in.
Okay, it sounded to me like what we were saying is that we thought that is within the scope of the safety subcommittee to make recommendations to the larger Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee on establishing speed limits, on establishing some type of education program that promotes safety awareness, and recommend that there be some thought given to how to manage technology, the e-technology. What I heard is that the issue of managing and making policy and making recommendations around e-technology is beyond the scope of the safety subcommittee. That should be really taken up by the larger Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. Dorcas made the point that we really do need an education program and that we should really focus on that.
Yeah.
But that, again, it's not the responsibility of the safety committee to do that, but we would make the recommendation that
Yep.
the larger committee take it on. So,
That's great, Mary Beth. That's exactly what we needed. And again, when you know, we can, if we are in agreement, we can give the town a pretty detailed list of all the things they could do. Not that we're going to do it, but we can do that.
you keep saying town, but I don't think you mean.
I know. I mean
town.
yeah. Sorry, I skipped the step.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So at this time, I'd like to open it up to the public, and I know some of you have been waiting a long time. So I would say, if somebody, Dory, thank you, Dory. Please go first. If you could just state your name and your address on Concord for the record.
Thank you. You can hear me now, I assume. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
You can't see me. I don't know what happened. The video is supposed to start.
There you are. Well,
Is it there? Fine. Yeah, good. My name is Dory Keogh. I'm on 51 MacArthur Road in Concord. And I'm looking a little bit for clarification here. I admire what you're doing because safety is one of the concerns. I was one of the original members of the Green Thumbs, of which Dorcas is a very active, our best weeder in the whole town, I would say. If you ever need your garden weeded, have Dorcas do it. She can do it in an instant. But I'm very serious about this. And I want some clarification. And I think one of you, maybe it was Mary Beth, helped to clarify what I was asking, because you're speaking for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, its extension for wherever it begins and wherever it ends. But are you talking, and the other part of it is that the Concord, you're mentioning the town, what the town might do. As you know, and I'm very well aware, the town has made it clear from day one, we're not going to enforce anything as far as speed limits and so on within the area, which is something which naturally concerns us all. And I'm so happy that you have a subcommittee looking at safety because it is important. But what I'm not clear of is when you're talking that you're speaking as doing this for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee, are you including Junction Park as part of the rail trail?
yes. So if it's okay with Dorcas and Mary Beth, I'll take a first pass at answering Dory. So just for clarification, this safety subcommittee is a subcommittee of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. Mm-hmm. The purview of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee is only the rail trail in Concord. So it is not for, we do not speak for any other town. We collaborate through various vehicles such as the Friends. I just wanted to make sure that was clear. Anything that we conclude or motion today will then be presented out to the full Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, who then will decide if they even agree with what we have done.
That's clear, but that's not my question.
I got your second question. Is the Junction Park part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail? I'm going to see if Marcia's online. I see you're muted. if Marcia would like to answer that, if Marcia is not available, if Dorcas, you would like to answer that, or Mary Beth. We got 3 choices. Go ahead,
Well,
Marcia.
I'm not sure I understood her question to begin with. In that,
Would you like me to restate it?
yes, please.
Thank you. When you're talking about the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail in Concord, I know where the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail begins up north of here. Are you including Junction Park as part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail?
Yes,
When has that been done?
from day one.
And I have to say,
Bill
you know,
Renault designed it to include the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail within Junction Park. We have been over this number of times, Dory.
Marcia, I would like some respect from you as a town employee.
And I would like some respect from you as a resident.
and if I can just step in, I'm the new kid here. So Dory, I fully appreciate that there's history that I'm not aware of. You know, I'm the new kid coming from New Jersey, so I appreciate that there's all kinds of perspectives. But, you know, as a safety subcommittee, you know, we're not going to be in a position to relitigate or imagine something.
I do appreciate this. It's just that I have not ever heard that stated.
Okay.
I would also like to say, when the Junction Park was first being designed by Concord Public Works, they approached the town of Concord. They approached the Green Thumbs, which had recently started, and said, would you like to help us in the design? Which we did. And we maintain, as you know, all the gardens there and so on. We said, we've heard about something about a rail trail in this area. Should we take that into consideration in our planning? And
Yeah.
we were, I'm sorry?
No. This is very helpful because
Well, let me explain then. We said, should we put in a rail trail when we're designing this? We carte blanche with Public Works. And we were told, well, we'll talk with the people who are doing the design of the rail trail through Concord, which was Greenman Peterson Engineering, working with the Director of Planning. And the answer came back to us, don't worry about it. We have it all taken care of. And in fact, in 2010 or 11, the Greenman Peterson and the planning director presented to the town and all the boards and committees that would be doing this, their suggestions for where the rail trail should go. It was not in Junction Park. It was not. And so this was unfortunate, because if we had known, well, of course, we would have put a separate rail trail within Junction Park off to the side, which has now been recommended as being for the formal final plan. And so if this were only given to us, and so now I had not heard anybody say that this is and has been formally included. And that for me is very helpful. I will then turn it over to Terry Ackerman.
What actually I'm going to try to, because we have a limited amount of time, this is what I'm going to recommend. And I apologize, I don't mean to curtail this conversation, but that is outside of our scope. And so I am going to curtail it simply by saying that what we will do, and we will include this in the minutes, is we will request from the town the whatever documentation, you know, early on where the original layouts were, and we'll make those again part of the public record. But with apologies, this is outside of our scope.
I completely understand.
Deborah, the documentation is already on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee's website. There's a detailed list.
Yes, I thought so. So the materials are there. Maybe we can provide a link out of courtesy in the minutes or something like that, just to be kind. I think that makes sense.
Thank you very much.
No problem. And Dorcas, please.
My husband was on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail originally. When they decided to route it through Concord, they considered every possible way to keep it out of Junction Park. And it never was possible to be done with safety to the people who ride bikes. They went down Commonwealth Avenue, they went everywhere. There was no other possible solution. So that's why it's in Bruce Freeman, that's why it's in Junction Park, and that's where it has to stay.
Okay, and again, thank you so much for that. So for any further discussions about Junction Park, I would encourage everyone to send a letter to Nat, because that is, you know, part of the full Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and I'm sure they would be happy to discuss it. But I do think in our scope is safety, and given how we have a very beautiful park that the rail trail runs through, then it's yet another reason for the importance of a safety awareness committee. So what's open to the public now, what we've been discussing is what we think is in the scope of our committee. And so far, what we've said is, number one, to simply acknowledge that we don't enforce a speed limit. We have some opinions, we can state those and recognize that this is an important issue. Number two, and probably the biggest piece of scope, is to recommend that we have a fairly rigorous safety and awareness program. And then number three, the third component is recommend that further analysis is done of the impact of, I'll just call it the E factor. So that's sort of what we're suggesting, and I'd like public opinion on that. And I see we have a member of the public, Karen Young. If you could state your name and address in Concord for the record, that would be terrific.
Yes, my name is Karen Young. I live at 49 Crest Street. My concern is focused on the safety issue,
Okay.
which I encounter every day. And I'm just curious if this is part of your purview. I live on Crest Street, so I often walk on Old Marlborough Road and then take a right and go down the trail and across Commonwealth and into Junction Park. And I'm always surprised to see how often the crosswalk light does not function at that intersection. And often when I'm walking, it's usually around 7:30ish. So there are a lot of middle school kids riding the trail going up towards the middle school. And I often wonder, because again, this is an education issue as well, but they don't necessarily seem to know that they should stop and look for cars or even try to push the walk button. But the walk light just more often than not does not function. And I'm wondering if there might be a better option for that cross there. I mean, to me, it is a huge safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes the light flashes when you're walking in one direction, but not the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm talking about the intersection on Old Marlborough Road, where the trail crosses, not Williams Road. That one seems more functional, but it's just, you know, that road is, as you all know, is extremely busy in the mornings, and it's, I guess you know, one thing is, can something be done about it? And also, to whom does one report these issues? Is that something that would come under your scope as you define it for this process?
Marsha, I think, has a comment she wants to make.
Okay.
Yeah. We received, when they were initially installed, they were intended to be, you hit the button and the lights would flash. During COVID, we received a grant to add the pads in the pavement so that it would automatically go on, but there is insufficient sunlight, and we're running into issues where they're not functioning regularly. Our Concord Public Works Engineering Division has tried a number of things. We're waiting for parts right now. That's the last I heard, but they're going to be looking at additional alternatives, because it's not conducive at that location. And so they're researching it. When you have issues like that, you can either report them to the Concord Police. The safety officer is Ron Holsinger. And Concord Public Works is responsible for the maintenance on the trail. So those are the two. Aaron McCloskey, he is the highway and ground superintendent who will be responsible for maintaining, like if trees fall or there's a hazard of some kind. So
okay. All right.
And the only comment that I would add would be, I think, you know, I'd look to my committee members, see if they agree that if we're making recommendations in terms of a safety and awareness campaign, I think, and we've already said it in the, you know, again, I've got notes. One of the lines is reminding people how you report problems. So absolutely, that would be part of the safety and awareness campaign. And you know, you could even, you know, add, you know, periodic monitoring, but I think we're getting out of our scope. Somebody else does that for the town. Somebody else monitors whether lights are, I just don't want to get in that business, you know.
Okay.
But I really appreciate, you know, I raised 4 children, and I still struggle sometimes getting them to, you know, they're adults, and it's a mindset, which gets back to safety and awareness. So thank you so much for your feedback. I see we have a couple other members of the public. I apologize, I have to take a quick drink. Any other members of the public want to make comments about the suggested scope? Okay, I'm not seeing any other comments. Karen, your hand is still up, but I think you can just put that down, and I think good, perfect. So I'm going to take a crack at a motion for the scope. I'm going to go really slow, and if y'all agree with how I state this, we can second it. I do think we can put much more detail, of course, later, but let me give this an attempt. So I would like to motion that the scope of the safety subcommittee of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee includes, number 1, a recognition of the importance of speed limit, with the also recognition that we don't enforce it, and realization we can make recommendations for discussion by the full committee, given its importance to other towns. Number 2, and the bulk of our scope, is to make a recommendation to the town of what a safety awareness campaign and program would look like. There are a great many components which we would put together for the town, including education by the schools, education of other groups of people, the different mechanisms that we can provide, that how to report incidents, etc. So that's the second component of the scope, is to make a recommendation to the town as to what that would look like. And then the third component that would be in scope for the safety subcommittee is to make a recommendation to the town that further analysis should be conducted on the impact of all E types of devices on the rail trail. It's beyond e-bike, and we feel that it warrants separate either discussion, analysis, etc. That is the motion. Do either one of my committee members feel comfortable seconding the motion?
I'm wondering if there's more. I mean, we've already taken care of the signage. So I guess we don't need to do anything more about that. So I guess
the only other things, I'm looking at my notes.
I think, yeah.
Advocate, working with other communities, which you could argue could be part of the safety awareness campaign, but that was the other thing, is continuing to work with other organizations and see what they're doing around safety. That's the only thing that we really left off.
So instead of safety limits, I think I'd probably say speed limits.
Okay, got it.
Instead of, let's see, education program, I think is critical, and safety awareness program, yeah, and impact of EDO advice. Yeah, that's good. I'm good with that. I second it.
Okay,
Okay. So we have now a motion, and now we will take a roll call for the motion of the scope of the safety subcommittee for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. Mary Beth Barker,
aye,
Dorcas Miller,
Right.
Deborah Adelman, Chair. I also second the motion. The motion has passed in terms of the scope of the safety subcommittee for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. That does conclude our agenda, but we now can turn to section 4, which is correspondence and public comments. There are no correspondence, but I do see we have another hand raised. So public comments now at this time on any other topics. Dory Kehoe.
Thank you very much for calling on me. Leaving aside my concern in general for safety, because this is a public park. It's always been called a public park. Now I will start calling it the Junction Park Rail Trail, and hope I don't choke when I say it, because I feel like we were snookered, if you will. But this is my question. You have good ideas of having safety for speed, and which is critical, which is what we are all concerned about, because many people use this rail trail, like the elderly walking downtown or the children from the children's centers. That speed limits are very important to us. So as long as we're on this thing, let's make it work. So how are you going to make it work when the police have stated clearly and publicly on multiple occasions, we will not enforce any kind of speeding or walk your bike or anything else? So you're doing this work, which is admirable and which I can only agree with, because safety is my main concern here. But what point is there in you're doing that? When you can't.
No, you raise a good point, and I've talked to a lot of people from other rail trails. There was actually just a rail trail, Mass Bikes did a conference. I did not attend. I'm hoping that some of the meetings were recorded, and if anybody attended, please interrupt me now. And I think, also kind of looking at my personal life, what I do for a living is risk management. So this is what I do. I finished my 8 hours and now I'm on this call. It's the same thing. And we have an expression, it's called the steady drip, drip, drip of communication. And it's amazing what happens when you educate children and you create a badge program where children can proudly wear a badge. When you go into the senior community and you similarly deputize them, when you have champions every Saturday that are out at the intersections, and it's not that you're shaming people if they don't do the right thing, but you're promoting the right thing. And so, no, there's not going to be a way to enforce it. But yes, what in my experience, with a steady drip, 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 you actually make a difference. And that's what I found in discussions with other towns.
I hope we live that long, because I think this is going to take a lot of drip, drip, dripping. And it's not little kids, and it's not the elderly. It's everybody in between, and many of the elderly. I also, coming back to that, also is the enforcement. The idea of when the lights flash on Old Marlborough Road, is it required that one stop? Those are flashing lights. So it doesn't require drivers to stop, does it?
I don't know if anybody else knows. I
mean,
don't know.
that's part of your rail trail.
Mary
I
Beth?
think that when the lights are flashing and there's a striped crosswalk, I believe that the striped crosswalk means yield to pedestrians. Pedestrians have the right of way. That is what I remember about crosswalks in general that are striped that way, is the pedestrians have the right of way.
Well, if that's the case, then why would I, as someone who's paying for the road, the use of the road as a taxpayer, and I am a taxpayer in Concord, why do I have to stop for somebody who's on a bike who's not paying for any use of Old Marlborough Road?
I don't
Yeah,
know. how
I don't,
to
yeah.
Ever answer that question.
believe-
Dorcas, go ahead,
I
Dorcas.
believe that the people on the rail trail are required to stop at stop signs. Now, once they get there and they've stopped at the stop signs, then they are allowed to go across the road. But it's not as though the bicycles are barreling down the rail trail and the cars are barreling down Old Marlborough Road. No, bicycle people are required, or people on the bike trail are required to stop and look, at least look.
Yeah, well,
But they do have
not
the right
clear.
of way.
It's not clear, just as a suggestion to you, because
That's a rule. That's a
There,
basic.
and there are stop signs posted. It's clear if you're on your bike or if you're walking. You stop at the stop sign, you
yeah.
look both ways before you
Yeah,
proceed
but,
into
you know,
the intersection.
And you raise another point, and I can't solve it, but you know, I was on the Cape Cod Rail Trail just over the summer, and you know, I saw these very scary vehicles, you know, that trust me, they're not an e-bike because the wheels are really big, and they were proudly going down at least 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And I know I said this on another call, so your point is well taken. You know, in the absence of enforcement, what can we do? And I think it gets back to what we already put in our scope was to recommend to the town that we gather information, since we know that we don't, you know, we don't have that capability. So your point is well taken, Dory, and you know, and that's why I'm so proud of the principles that we have, because it is common sense and courtesy, and you're absolutely right. It's the middle. But I do think that, at least from my research, that as we do this awareness, it's going to begin to help, but we do need further analysis. I'm conscious of time. We're wrapping things up, trying to get this completed by 6 o'clock. No, but your feedback, Dory, was terrific, because these calls are recorded and they help people that perhaps join, you know, at a later meeting or new to the town, you know, so I appreciate it. And just, you know, Marcia has from the very beginning been involved, and I just can't thank Marcia enough for everything she's done. So if there's no other business, I'd like to hear a motion that this meeting be adjourned. But before I do that, I'd like to note that this committee, our next step would be to get the minutes, and then we have another rail trail full committee, and that we would simply discuss of course, the minutes will not be approved by the next meeting necessarily. They won't unless we meet again, but that we will discuss what we just did, and we can verbally present it to the full rail trail. That would, I believe, be our next step. Otherwise, we have to meet again. You have to approve the minutes, and then they go. But I think there's nothing that prevents us from discussing this with the full Rail Trail Advisory Committee, if that makes sense to you guys. I believe our next meeting is in a couple weeks, right? Does anybody, I don't know if anybody has I think it's the 10th.
December 1st.
That's December 1st, yes.
Yeah, so we're not gonna meet again. Again, we are not gonna meet again. So that's kind of what would happen is, you know, our minutes would not be approved, but we can read them out and be discussed, if that makes sense to you, Marcia.
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay, so do we have a motion that the meeting can be adjourned?
Motion to adjourn.
I second the motion. If we can take a roll call for the adjournment of the meeting. Now we are adjourning as opposed to when we started. Mary Beth Barker,
Aye.
Dorcas Miller,
Aye.
Debbie Adelman, aye. This meeting is adjourned.
Are we going to set another date?